Welcome back. A very good morning to you, wherever you're listening to us, and whether it's on Facebook, listening via online or tune in. A very good morning to you, and welcome to the program. My name is Jones Awuah, and this is GN Morning Breakfast Show, coming live and direct to you from our London studios. If you're listening or watching, if you're watching on Facebook, please do share. Okay, do share if you're listening or watching on Facebook. Share. Let's hear let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. Sorry, I've just gone on to Facebook myself. I'm trying to share as I'm talking to you. Okay, so whilst you're on here, leave your messages, your comments on there, and I will read them out. Okay. We have a lot to discuss this morning, as I mentioned earlier before I went on the break. So many things to discuss. But I think first and foremost, it's worth mentioning that the Bristol bus boycott organizer, Roy Hackett, has sadly passed away at the age of 93. This was a very momentous moment for Black people here in England. Mr. Hackett was one of the organizers of the Bristol bus boycott, a successful campaign to overturn a ban by Bristol Omnibus Company on employing Black and Asian drivers and conductors. He once said, "I lived in many places before I came to Bristol, and I never had racism as tough as back then." The Jamaican-born was appointed an OBE in 2009 and an MBE in 2020. He leaves behind 3 children. It was hard for us to find a place to live. It was hard for a Black man to find a job, he added. He's here referring to Bristol, sorry. And I quote him, he said, "I walked down Ashley Road looking for a house and found one house which didn't have a card on it, to one that said no gypsy, no dogs, no Irish, and no coloreds. The lady opened the door, saw me, and without saying a word, just slammed the door. It was a struggle. People were blatantly racist," he remembered. Mr. Hackett was the co-founder of the Commonwealth Coordinated Committee, which set up the St. Paul's Carnival in 1968. In 1963, it was entirely legal for British companies to discriminate against someone because of the color of their skin. Mr. Hackett joined the forces with campaigners Paul Stevenson, Owen Henry, and Guy Bailey to begin the boycott that year. Mr. Bailey applied for a job at the bus company and was denied because of his skin color. The subsequent protests saw the company change its policies and helped pave the way for Race Relations Act in 1965 and 1968. So rest in peace, our condolences to Mr. Hackett's family and loved ones this morning. It's worth mentioning because I actually came across this particular story or knew of him or in the particular this story. I think only a few years ago, actually. I mean, I knew vaguely about the Bristol bus boycott, right? But I didn't know who the people were behind it. I knew that something happened in the 60s. I didn't know much until I did an interview with Nana Asante. I think she's a former mayor. And she actually spoke about this. This was, I think we're talking about inequality, actually, and racism in Britain. And she brought up this story. She brought up the Bristol bus boycott, and also touched on Roy Hackett and the people who organized it. And I learned a lot about this story of Guy Bailey, who applied for a job and was turned down as a result of the color of his skin. And back in the 60s, it was actually permitted. It was permissible for a company in Britain to turn you down due to the color of your skin, to refuse your application because you happen to be non-white or non-European or whatever, because of the color of your skin. This was in the 60s. And thankfully, because of that protest to boycott the buses, that led to the Race Relation Act of 1965 and 1968. So, in my eyes, Mr. Hackett is a hero. Mr. Hackett is a hero. And, it hurts and it's sad that he's passed away. But these are the people that lay down the foundation for you and I, for a lot of our people to be able to now work as bus drivers, okay? And we have to recognize such people. Now, before we proceed any further, as I always do in the morning, it's worth noting that I'm inviting you to get on board, to come on, let's talk, let's have a discussion. I'm here till 11 a.m. today, okay? So we have plenty of time to discuss, to talk. And I invite you to call in 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can call 0778-793-9958. These are the numbers you need to call in. Let me hear you. Let's talk. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a conversation. Because believe it or not, one way or another, or the other, I should say, whatever policies that are made will have impact on you and I. So let's get involved. Let's find out what's happening around us so we can also chip in. All right, now let's begin with the newspaper headlines here in the UK. We spoke about this yesterday, and a lot of the papers are running with this particular story. The Profits by BP. And we begin with the Daily Mirror. The Daily Mirror leads with oil giant BP's latest results, which saw it make 6.9 billion profits in just 3 months. Can you imagine? Shareholders are laughing all the way to the bank. And here we are, you and I were struggling to pay our energy bills. The high cost of living going up the roof. And on their front page, the Daily Mirror has it as Brazilian profiteers. All right, The Guardian leads on the same story, as it says there is outrage that oil firms rake in profits while energy bills soar. The paper says nearly 50 billion profit has been shared by the world's 5 biggest oil companies, prompting calls for higher taxes on the sector. The front page also features a picture of U.S. House of Representative Speaker Nancy Pelosi during her controversial visit to Taiwan. The Daily Star And it's a picture of a man with the petrol um, nozzle laying on a tank. Greedy bleeders. The Daily Star dresses up its front page with a picture of a BP chief executive, actually. So it's the chief executive, Bernard Looney, on an oil barrel saying, "We've got you over a barrel." On the Daily Telegraph says voting in the Tory leadership election has been delayed over warnings that hackers could change people's ballots. It says the concerns means that plans to allow members to change their vote up until the final deadline have been scrapped as a result. The paper is one of several to carry a picture of Princess Charlotte enjoying herself at the Commonwealth Games. I mean, look, let's talk about the latter, the Commonwealth Games. Have you been watching it? For once, well, I think this is probably the first time I haven't been able, maybe the second time actually. Obviously, due to COVID, the Commonwealth Games couldn't take place, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I don't know what people feel about how people feel about the Commonwealth. I don't know. You've been watching it. You enjoying it? You excited? Does this represent what the Commonwealth means to you? Let's move on. The Daily Express. The Daily Express also focuses on politics as it carries the message from Tory leadership front-runner Liz Truss. The Foreign Secretary has vowed to get the economy firing on all cylinders. Firing on all cylinders, I should say. I know. Obviously, I think again I've said this on multiple occasions that especially the right-wing newspapers, the papers that support conservative, um, really going for Liz Truss. You don't see anything about Rishi Sunak. You don't see any. Uh, I'll be damned to see the likes of the Guardian or the Independent actually putting Rishi Sunak or pushing Rishi Sunak, or the Daily Mirror, I should say, pushing Rishi Sunak on the front pages. So you can see the agenda of the newspapers, who they're going for, who they want to become the next prime minister. The Times. The Times says 60% of Tory membership prefer Ms. Truss as the next prime minister, as her lead over former Chancellor Rishi Sunak grows. The paper carries the YouGov poll, which suggests that 26% of members prefer Mr. Sunak. So there you go. There you go. I mean, look, a couple of elections, especially the Brexit elections and also the US elections, has taught us one thing, that we shouldn't really rely on polls. But I think this one, unless some drastic, miraculous thing happens, I don't think this is, and I might be wrong, this is just my opinion, okay? Just looking at the way that the newspaper have been positioning Liz Truss and the coverage that Rishi Sunak has received, there's only one person that's going to come out as triumphant. There's only one person, I believe. It's going to be Liz Truss. So she's in pole position to become the next prime minister. Let's see what the Daily Mail have on their front page. And of course, they've got a picture of Liz Truss. Can you imagine? So I think about 3 or 4 newspapers right now, 3 actually, all talking about Liz Truss with her picture on there, right in your face, okay? And nothing about Rishi Sunak. No, nothing positive about Rishi Sunak. The Daily Mail leads on China's chilling threat over Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. Beijing has vowed to use targeted military action in response to diplomatic visit to the island. Ms. Pelosi is the most prominent politician to visit Taipei in 25 years, the paper says. The Metro. Heartbreak for Archie's family is the headline on the Metro, as it says judges had refused a final reprieve for the schoolboy. His parents want him to die with dignity in a hospice instead of at hospital, the paper says. All right, let's look at the Independent again. Liz Truss. So much for the legacy is the headline on the Eye, which says the government has refused to give girls equal football in PE lessons despite Lionesses' victory in the Women's European Championships. Okay, so again, It goes to show, right, the misogynistic nature in this country and the lack of equality. I mean, the Lions win over Germany should, in an ideal situation, right, have impacted all of us in such a way that we can see what, women can do if given the opportunity and given the support and the backing, the financial support and the financial backing. And this, when it comes to sports and major tournaments, right? And I use myself as an example that seeing a sports person or meeting them or meeting anybody in the public sphere, right, can have such a massive impact on a child's life, which is priceless. And I think sometimes we overlook that. Imagine a young girl watching TV and seeing the support. I mean, it was sold out, wasn't it? The finals was sold out. To be able to identify herself with some of these players and also going on to replicate what these players have been able to achieve. But here we go. The newspapers carried the story for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden, we don't see much about it anymore. The Financial Times. I guarantee you, if England happened to have won the European Championship or the World Cup, or did they win the European Championship? I can't remember. The World Cup, I know that the under-20s won the World Cup a few years ago. But if England would have won the World Cup, I can guarantee you, right, that the newspapers will carry this story, not just the newspaper, not just tabloids, the media, I should say, myself included, right? Well, maybe not. I think for me, probably if it was an African country, then yeah, I probably carry the story for a whole year because it's never been done. It's never been achieved. But England, since 1966, that England won the World Cup, it would have been massive, massive. Stories upon stories upon stories upon stories upon stories, following individuals, constantly being bombarded, going to individuals' background, how they became professional athletes, the real story behind the individual. I mean, nonstop. It will never end. And then before you know it, there's documentaries, mini documentaries, podcasts, you name it. But when it comes to women's football, we don't see the same impact. Right. The Financial Times. The Financial Times leads on global management company Bain & Co. being banned from tendering for UK government contract for 3 years over its grave professional misconduct in a corruption scandal in South Africa. The Sun. And finally, The Sun has an interview with Rebecca Vardy following her High Court defeat in the so-called Wagatha Crystal libel case, or should I say Wagatha Christie libel case. She says that she was on holiday in Dubai when the now infamous message accusing her of leaking stories about Colin Rooney was published. Look, I don't know why they keep talking about this particular story. But anyway, that's the newspaper headlines here. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll turn and look at stories trending across the continent of Africa. Don't go nowhere. I'll be back soon. And when I come back, I will continue with my discussion on the continental concert that I attended last week, Saturday, and it was phenomenal. So it was absolutely phenomenal, okay? I'll talk about it. I'll share my stories. And I keep posting pictures on social media, okay? Just so you know. That's how much I enjoyed myself. This is GN Morning Breakfast Show with me, John Awuah. We'll be back right after these short commercials.
Yo, Ghana for you want English approach my moha. Ya sweaty. Yenya emranimfo a won akwadare wo emranimu a poto kasa mu ye kasa a lawyer for entimi nuanom mumyemfo ye immigration ensem nyina enko dan wo mo Fortwell solicitors emranimu akukudro for se watena ha che ombeboa wo ma wonsa ka won krata na se wedi edro nso a eyo mo kokokra eba ne nipa setena mu ani adwuma mu nsem bia omudi mu akotene pa omo wo mre di mani pa bia na de enika wo mu poni se no consultation fee.
Fortwell Solicitors always puts our clients' needs first. We specialize in all UK visa applications, detention and deportation cases, student and work points-based work permit applications from both UK and abroad. Fortwell Solicitors also deals with long residence and human rights applications outside the immigration rules. Don't wait till last minute. Fortwell Solicitors is located at
Unit 1, ground floor, Katrina House, 58 Clarendon Road, London, N80DJ. Nearest tube station, Tempark Lane and Wood Green. Overground, Hornsey Station. Buses, 41 to Archway and 144 to Maswa Hill. For more info, call 0203 3257 030. Call our 24-hour line on 0754 8701 011. Website www.fortwellsolicitors.com.
Opening hours Monday to Friday 9:30 to 5:30 p.m.
Thursday beyond so your Milton Keynes.
Fortwell Solicitors is regulated by SRA.
Fortwell Solicitors.
Become a successful entrepreneur with Jackie and her professional team. Become a successful entrepreneur. Anase Base. Wami a team of professional teachers of economics, marketing. Ninga omoyebi. So pesa will transform our life from a youth graduate and a school leaver. Nasa pesa wo ye entrepreneur. Mon contacti Base. Entrepreneur no che say obia ebia wa business. Ebia wo che. But pesa wo ye no in a professional way. To say Oprah Winfrey. Anaya papa. Kwame Despite. Base. Bet mama sa Diano Abim. One your experts coaching and a mentoring. And as all person will start to our business base for bet show how will be expanding business and as existing customer base. Base provides support in business plans, step-by-step finance applications, and marketing strategies. Base or become a successful entrepreneur also provide entrepreneurship skills through vision and determination. Some more per free consultation for a base
073 99867 417. I repeat 073 99867 417.
And also one email address info@becomeasuccess.co.uk. Website www.becomeasuccess.co.uk. Mokohwa mobetimi make bookings for an appointment. Base and I said become a successful entrepreneur. Let's turn your vision into a reality.
The world as we know it has changed, and so have the issues affecting our community.
COVID-19 and the geopolitical tensions have really made it abundantly clear that the African continent has to do more to be self-sufficient from an industrial capacity point of view.
Join me, Jones Awuah, on GN Breakfast Show as we look at issues affecting us here in the UK, with a close eye on trending stories across the world.
When we invest from the UK into infrastructure in African countries, that it is absolutely transparent.
With a focus on Ghana's social and political issues.
I mean, it's not about you thinking about, your money, the Sikadiya Basa is not what our authorities should be thinking about, or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Jones Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Akosua na mutini seni akoda ya de sese de sa jinsemu. Ebusua. Ese dia me pe no. Yonku na si ho no. Usani mame. Hwe, ya sorry preku pe na fa akora no kona kwagina yaresa. Adan wo wura fise ebisa wo yi efitra kunkun ana. Samuel nwome di kan etredu no nwotwe di chemu nwotwe no. Eho na bra na so wo ne Philippine for ekokon. Okọ oba bia no aben ewo humu. Emo de to nanim se. Wokokon na obewu. Asante kotoko se wotu wotwo so a ehimu enu nti sorry preku pe na tutumirika. Na fa akora no kwagina yarehwe. Esanse anoma wo ho ye monopo. Maame kosohwe abo ni papi. Wonyo ma ti se yimu. Opeme okọ nachi na wasan ababiem. Se de onnam posene kane no. Wonim se oba bia ta adwaye a na osiesie no. Honhum yade te se obaidi. Honhum attack adayeso basabasa kodanna abrabo na sinitrase ayemhyehyɛ wo hyehye na adwiregu abrabo mu adesoa biada wo ba abrochire hayi ya santo apenso nanso wo nko a wo sia na abu wo hyehye na adwire wo bɔpa na esane sikato wo nsam a na ahye kai na hunu se obiara nu a watumi atumirika esan ɔtwen ho da ma wo ho anya hare na wo de na ankoye se abrodwoma a wɔforo bo wieye na afio ɔbɛka se wɔnu no ho wɔno yade adokotafo antimi ansa no enumpo ene ɔyɛ ho adwuma frema me kosohwe wɔ ahoma yi so 079084699914 079084699914 ana 0740580734 0740580734 mame kosohwe ana yɛtwe no a yɛtwe botantim
Welcome back to the program. Now, the visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan has caused, of course, a great concern within the international system. So while political progress has been slow, links between the two populations and economies in terms of China and Taiwan have grown sharply. Taiwanese companies have invested about 60 billion in China, and up to 1 million Taiwanese people now live there, many running Taiwanese factories. So I think this goes back to China trying to claim Taiwan, and of course, the US also supporting Taiwan as recognizing it as a democratic country. But there's a lot happening because now China, as I read earlier, China looking to take action against the US. And you know what's funny, right? This is what I find interesting about the US's position when it comes to territories and who they support or allies and so on and so forth, right? So just a bit of history here. In the 1800s, okay, in the 1800s, or maybe even, I'm sure it was the 1800s or the 1700s. Anyway, so after the Union was formed, which we now know as the United States of America, right? The Union consisted of 13 states, and then subsequently went on to take over other states, and then we had the Civil War. So at that time, the U.S., or should I say, parts of the U.S., was a British colony. Now, as the U.S. expanded its territory across the Americas, right, the U.S. actually introduced their foreign policy to warn okay, to warn European powers, especially France, the UK, not to interfere with the affairs of the Americas, of the Western Hemisphere. And then if you fast forward, you fast forward 2020, 2021, of course, as the US was stopping the Europeans from interfering in the business across the Americas, they were there expanding and taking over territories. And then obviously in the 1800s, mid 1800s to early 1900s, it became emerged as a world power. And then they were able to build, obviously due to economic power, the steel revolution helped strengthen its economy. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is for the US, which is was part of their foreign policy, which it still is, not to tell another country to get involved, but the US feels that it has the power and the authority to get involved with the issue of China and Taiwan. I'm not picking sides here, but I'm just putting it out to you, okay? So, right. Anyway, I just looked at my time and the system. The monitor is telling me, actually, we're going for another break, okay? So just bear with me. Do stay tuned. We're going for a few minutes, and when we come back, we'll delve into what we've got to discuss today. And I do want to hear from you, okay? So do get involved, all right? We'll be back shortly. For our listeners on Facebook, I'll continue the discussion until we come back and we have everybody on here. We have everybody on here, okay? So we can, they can also listen to what it is that we're going to talk about. But I just want to talk about this whole the concept of democracy and how it's shaped the world, whether it's been successful or not. I think you can argue for and against it. And in Africa's case, which leads us to what we're talking about here, the question that we're asking from the president of Ghana, who's saying that slavery reparations for Africa is long overdue. Do you agree? Let me just read some of the president's comments, okay? The reason why he's saying that this is long overdue. And this, his comment has gone viral. And I think, as I said earlier, it resonates with the likes of us here in the diaspora, simply because of what we've experienced as individuals of as a minority in this country. Not just in this country, people all over, okay? Now, as the president of Ghana, Nana Addo, was speaking on the opening of a 4-day reparations and racial healing summit in Accra, he said that the time for Africans who suffered from 300-year-long transatlantic slave trade to receive compensation is overdue. While making his case, he bemoaned that other groups, including slave owners and Native Americans, received some form of reparations, while Africans have been left out. And I'm quoting, this is the president of Ghana, by the way. Native Americans have received and continue to receive reparations. Japanese Americans' families who were incarcerated in internment camps in America during Second World War received reparations. Jewish people, 6 million of whom perished in the concentration camp of Hitler Germany, received reparations, including homeland grant and support. So it is time for Africa, 20 million of whose sons and daughters had their freedoms curtailed and sold into slavery, also to receive reparations. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Or you totally disagree? I might have to go over this just for the sake of our listeners on radio. Okay. In case if you're wondering why I keep referring to radio, because we're streaming on Tunein as well, and how it is programmed here is we have time that the brakes automatically kicks in, right? And we pick up the news as well, news bulletins. So it kicks in at the designated time. So whilst we're still live on Facebook, people that are listening on radio are unable to hear what it is that we're discussing. So when we do come back, it's only right for me to reiterate what I have just said. So, welcome back once again. If you just tuned in, this is GN Radio UK, the morning breakfast show with myself, Jones Awuah. Now we're asking about reparation. According to the president of Ghana, reparations for Africans of African descent is long overdue. Now, as the president was speaking at the opening of a 4-day reparations and racial healing summit in Accra, he said that the time for Africans who suffered from 300-year-long transatlantic slave trade to receive compensation is long overdue. While making his case, Nanado bemoaned at the fact that other groups, including slave owners and Native Americans, received some form of reparations, while Africans have been left out. And I quote the president, okay? Nanado says that Native Americans have received and continue to receive reparations. Japanese American families who were incarcerated in internment camps in America during Second World War received reparations. Jewish people, 6 million of whom perished in concentration camps of Hitler's Germany, received reparations, including homeland grants and support. He went on to say that it is time for Africa, 20 million of whose sons and daughters had their freedoms curtailed and sold into slavery, also to receive reparations. Has he got a point? Or do you think we've gone past that stage now? Let me know. I would like to hear your take on it. 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Let's hear your take on it. Is it time for Africans to also receive reparations? Let's hear what you've got to say on that particular subject. I've got a few text messages coming in. Let's take a couple of your messages and then we'll move on. But that story will still continue for the rest of the show. This is from James. James is saying the president of Ghana is spot on. However, I think it has come little too late. With this economic situation right now that we're facing, I don't think any country would be willing to say, here you go, take this for all the wrongs that we have done to you. This is from Kwame. Kwame is saying, Jones, good for the president of Ghana to say that, but it would have been best for him to say it whilst he was on a trip to the US or in Great Britain. I think it would have had a massive impact. Well, I mean, you've got a point there, but the BBC have also carried a story, which means that you know how things run these days. As soon as it trends on social media, then news agencies are compelled to publish it. But I do take your point that it would have had much more of a significant impact if he would have said it in the US and also here in the UK. Okay, this is from Alice. Alice is saying we need to stop begging them. We need to move on and build our own. Reparations won't solve anything. How about they sort out what's happening across the continent of Africa and stop begging? We can achieve and we can manage our own affairs. Okay. All right, keep your comments coming in. All right, keep your thoughts and comments coming in. As I said, I do invite you to come on the show. Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk. Now, this is a story that is close to my heart, simply because I think when when trade commenced, I think it was the 1st of January 2021. So off the back of COVID. And what I'm talking about here is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Okay. So, and I mean, we did our best to try to enlighten people on this initiative from the African Union. And to date, I still think people are not aware of what is happening when it comes to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So just bear with me, just to explain a little bit of what the AFCFTA is. So the acronym is AFCFTA, meaning African Continental Free Trade Area or Agreement, however you want to put it. So the essence of this initiative, right, is to, if you look at trading, African countries tend to trade more with outsiders than trading among their neighboring countries, trading among themselves. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I checked, the level of trade between African countries was less than 14%, or just less than 15%, right? So we traded more with Europeans than we trade with our neighbors. So the AFCFTA is to boost regional integration, regional economic integration, and also to create a single market. So you can say it's a replica of the EU, the European Union, okay, the economic bloc. But this is Africa. So, for instance, from my understanding, they actually dealing on some instruments, some legal framework that they're sorting out. I spoke to His Excellency Wam Kelemene. He's the one that's spearheading this initiative. It's part of the African Union's Agenda 2063, which is the development across the continent. And this is just one initiative, okay? This is just one initiative. And so let me just give you a bit of a brief overview of this initiative, this policy. So the AFCFTA, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area, okay, once countries have been able to ratify the agreement, because there's a process, okay, so countries will sign to be part of it, and then they have to ratify it in their constitution, or ratify in their constitution, or its legal framework to attach it, so that in case any other government comes in, cannot just scrap it, all right? Or doing their legal bit to support this agreement, to also be a signatory to it. So it will be the world's largest free trade area, bringing together 55 countries of the African Union and 8 regional economic communities. So you have ECOWAS, you have SADC, you have the East African community. So all these regional blocks, okay, bringing them together. The overall mandate of the AFCFTA, right, is to create a single continental market with a population of about 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of approximately 3.4 trillion US dollars. The AFCFTA is just, as I mentioned, is just one of the flagship projects of Agenda 2063. Now, I don't know whether they'll be able to meet all the policies or the initiatives they want to implement by 2063, right? Which they've tagged the Africa we want. So this is the Africa we want is for children to be able to go to school, have free education, better education, women to be able to have access to capital, to be able to invest, to be able to, because a lot of women are into farming, okay, across the continent of Africa. And what restricts them is the accessibility to fund, to capital, to be able to expand their businesses, to be able to produce their crops in mass production. So this is part of the Agenda 2063 to enable women to be able to gain access, and also to, create job creation, entrepreneurship, trading or e-commerce. So for instance, if I'm purchasing something in Nigeria or Kenya or Tanzania or Morocco, right? I'm not paying in dollars, or the dollar is not what the price is pinned to, okay? That I should be able to pay in my local currency and be able to receive whatever it is I need to receive. So these are all parts of the schemes under this particular policy. So yeah, as I was saying, the Africa we want, the African Union's long-term development strategy for transformation, transforming the continent into a global powerhouse. And as part of its mandate, the AFCFTA is to eliminate trade barriers, so trade liberalization. Okay, so there's free, it will be tariff free. You don't need to pay anything. And this is only for countries who ratify this agreement, by the way. So what in effect will happen is that there's these instruments, everybody signs, comes under one umbrella. So if you want to trade, if you're an outsider, if you're non-AFCFTA member, then of course the trade liberalization does not include you. You're not included. You still have to pay the tariffs if you want to trade with with any country across the continent. The AFCFTA entered into force on Monday 30th, 2019, after 24 member states deposited their instrument of ratification following a series of continuous continental engagement spanning since 2012. So this is it's a historical moment, right? When the first bit of trading took place on the 1st of January 2021. And if you can cast your mind back, the founding fathers, of course, we know the African Union was formerly known as the OAU, the Organization of the African Union. And then I think back in 2002, they changed the name to African Union. This was done by Gaddafi at that time. And you realize that the founding fathers at the beginning of the OAU, it was all about the political freedom and trying to implement that because of what they were facing at that particular time, because a lot of the countries were still under the colonial rule. And it was about political freedom. And the next stage was by the economic freedom. And I think this is where we are now. It might have taken some long time to gain that political freedom, but it is here now. I had the opportunity to speak to the man in charge of this particular policy, His Excellency Wamkelemene of the AFCFTA Secretariat in Ghana. And this interview, basically, I just wanted him to explain the AFCFTA and what it's looking to do. Of course, I asked him a few questions as well. And prior to the interview, Wamkelemene had, there was a discussion at Chatham House, which I attended, right? And I asked him a couple of questions, which I also put out there so we can listen to it. Now, the interview is split into two parts. So I'll play the first part now, and then, because of the show, I'll play other parts as well. But nevertheless, if you want to call in or keep sending the text messages, I've seen text messages popping up on my screen about this particular the reparation, the slave reparations by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Okay. So I'll read them out very, very soon. Somebody has just texted me something that I will read out to you. So keep your texts and comments coming in. So once we listen to this, I mean, I've given you a bit of a background of the AFCFTA, okay? What it tends to do. But I'm asking, do you actually believe in it? Because there are people who are still very skeptical about this. Some of the major concerns that, it sounds good. It seems plausible, but would the likes of China and the West allow this to happen? Would they allow it to happen? But then, of course, we are in different times. But let's listen to this, and when we come back, we'll continue with our discussion.
Your Excellency, Wamkele Mene, thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us. Now, we've heard so much about the AFCFTA, and it's a pleasure to have you here to actually explain things to us. Because prior to coming on air, I did mention that we've been following the progress of the AFCFTA since its commencement. When you speak to people in the community, they're still not sure about the AFCFTA. So if I may ask, if you could explain what the AFCFTA is and its purpose.
First, thank you for inviting me. The AFCFTA is about two things: integrating our market, industrializing our continent. We have a market of 1.3 billion people that is potentially globally competitive, just like India, just like China. However, we all know we have been fragmented for many, many decades. We have economies that are individually very, very small. We have lack of competitiveness, whether it comes to trade or investment, because we have been approaching competitiveness individually as each country. And of course, there's not a single country in Africa that can, on its own, without the others, that can be globally competitive. And so our heads of states decided that let us consolidate on this large number, on this large population, and create one single market, and also consolidate our combined GDP to make sure that we are competitive as a continent. So what we've been doing in the last 2 years is to create the rules for that consolidation to happen, the underlying rules for a consolidated market economy, very much like what the European Union did about 70 years ago. So we have started on that journey. Of course, we are late in the game. I think everybody knows that. It's 65 years later, almost 70 years later, that we are starting this journey. But I think that the political will is there, and certainly the commitment is there for those countries that have ratified the agreement.
And I know that the AFCFTA is part of the African Union Agenda 2063.
Yes.
So it's one of its main policies. And I think probably one of the most important ones. You've spoken about the trade aspect or the integration aspect. Some may argue we already have regional blocks. You have ECOWAS, you have SADC. Why the AFCFTA?
Well, the regional economic communities are focusing on intra-regional economic activity, so intra-regional trade or intra-regional investment. Today, if you are in ECOWAS, you want to trade with somebody in East Africa, you are, as a person from ECOWAS, you are as competitive as a person from the United States or the United Kingdom or China. You have no preference into the market of the East African community, and vice versa, and other regions as well. So what the AFCFTA is intended to do is to bring those regions together so that as a business person in the East African community, we have a preferential market access in West Africa and vice versa, so that you as an African will now receive better treatment in the region that you are trading in, not your own region, but the other region that you're trading in. You have preferential treatment, and that's how it should be. We have to grant one another the best treatment in trade and investment. So the regional economic communities will continue to exist. What we are doing is to bring the overarching, this overarching coherence that has not been there for the last 65 years, as I said. It is totally unacceptable that when it comes to trade in Africa, we treat others better than we treat African goods or services or exports. So that is going to stop with this new agreement.
So in a way, the AfCFTA will act like a magnet to help facilitate trade across
regions. Absolutely, we lay the basis, the magnet for cross-regional trade to happen, and that's really important. If we want to boost intra-Africa trade, we have to get our regions trading amongst themselves. For now, if you look at our trade patterns, each region is trading with Europe. Each region trades more with Europe than with another region of the African continent. And so this goes to the point that you made earlier about integrating the market on our continent. And again, this is where Europe was 70 years ago. Each country was trying to do its own thing, and it didn't work. And they decided that the best thing to do is for them to integrate their markets.
And how many countries have so far ratified the agreement?
We have 42 countries that have ratified the agreement, which, as I noted earlier in the week, that is the fastest ratification in the history of the African Union. In less than 3 years, we've seen these countries ratify the agreement. Only one country has not signed. Those countries that have not yet ratified have not said we are not interested. They have said we have to go through our domestic legal processes for ratifying international instruments. So I'm very positive that by the end of the year, we will start to see the results that we want to see.
I mean, what has been some of the challenges? Because one can only assume that it must be very difficult when you look at some countries, especially looking at their GDPs, as opposed to other countries which are more industrialized.
The first big challenge was, of course, this project started in the middle of a pandemic. So to make the case for open trade in Africa, when 42 countries at that time were either in a full or partial lockdown and borders were closed, it's incredibly difficult to make the case for an integrated market with open borders in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. So that was the first challenge. The ongoing challenge is there are countries, the continent has differentials in levels of economic development, as you say. Some countries have a GDP per capita of $110, others much higher than that. So countries whose economies are relatively small have reason to be concerned that they will not be taken over or swamped by the big economies of the continent. And so we had to build into the agreement safeguards that will prevent that, number one. And number two, we've had to create what we call special and differential treatment for those countries. So, for example, if we want to reduce tariffs, we say that tariffs must be reduced in 10 years. Countries whose economies are smaller will get 15 years instead of 10 years. So we've found legal safeguards, and we've also found practical tools for giving those countries the flexibility that they require in order to adjust to implementation of the AfCFTA.
Okay, so I will leave that there for now. But I also had the opportunity to ask because I did attend the meeting at Chatham House because I feel like this is very, very important. So let's take a quick listen to this particular part during his discussion at Chatham House, where I asked him questions about security as well.
My name is Jones Awuah from Channel 7. Your Excellency, you've spoken about rules of origin, but I wanted to know if you could touch more on intellectual properties, because this is an area that a lot of people have spoken of. And secondly, with the level of instabilities across certain parts of the continent, what impact would that actually have on the AFCFTA?
First, I think that what we have seen from the pandemic is that Africa's over-reliance on global supply chains, whether it's for pharmaceuticals or whatever the product is, but in this case of IP, is a very bad thing. Our continent imported $16 billion worth of pharmaceutical products in 2019. The challenge is to have an intellectual property rights regime that will be bold enough to ask these big questions about enforceability of intellectual property rights when confronted with a public health crisis. This is we tried at the WTO many years ago. We did not succeed. We tried through the TRIPS amendment, we didn't succeed. And now I think we have an opportunity to have an intellectual property rights regime that will say, where there's a public health crisis, a global pandemic, and you have a patent, the patent was supported, the innovation was supported by public funds, I'm not sure that you should enjoy exclusive rights in that context. It's the right thing to do for our continent's industrialization. It's the right thing to do for our continent's public health. It is absolutely the right thing to do. That is why, in part, we have less than 10% Africans that are vaccinated today.
And I actually play this particular soundbite because I just want to go back to what we were discussing yesterday. I think Kofi Ali, good morning if you're listening, touched on the fact that yesterday we were talking about mental health, right? And Kofi Ali spoke about medication, how people who suffer from mental health need medication. And he spoke about the economic side of things, especially when it comes to Africa. The story being that it was reported that a woman suffering from mental health who roams around the streets of Accra killed a young man. And so the subject of how the country deals with mental health became was the point of discussion in which Kofi Ali touched on the economic side, how governments is either they don't have the means to fund adequate health care for people with mental health. And again, Kofi Ali talked about the medication. And I was saying, patent, intellectual property. And, this is why, like His Excellency Wam Kelemene mentioned there, the reason why less Africans have been vaccinated, not necessarily because of the so-called conspiracy theories or they don't believe in it. It's simply because we didn't get any access to vaccination for a long time. A lot of the countries were far advanced. So can you imagine? Here we are, as purported by the Western media during the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, that Africa will be hit the most because of our lack of good medical facilities or medical or healthcare systems. Imagine. And most recently, not long ago, Ramaphosa was the president of South Africa, was actually talking about the fact that these pharmaceutical companies will not allow Africans to manufacture the vaccines because of intellectual property. So this is why it has been very difficult, or when there's an outbreak, you tend to realize that Africans, or third world countries, so they call it, I don't know what a first and second world is, but yeah, tend to suffer. So if you think about AIDS, the AIDS pandemic, it hit Africa really, really hard, and it still continues to hit Africa really, really hard. And as one professor illustrated, he said, he actually explained this and it made so much sense. He said, so here we are. The reason why Africans were left to die as a result of HIV is that these pharmaceutical companies do not want Africans to be able to manufacture the AIDS medication. So you have medication manufactured by, let's say, I don't know, the West, UK, America, you name it, right? And for one medication, let's say it costs about £300 or $300 for one medication. Of course, if Africans are given the right to also manufacture that same medication, they're going to sell it for cheaper. So a tablet that is one tablet that costs $300 or £300, okay? Then you compare that to a country that is stricken with HIV and his annual GDP is about $100 or $200. How on earth would these people manage or be able to afford these medications? So the only thing you've got left is you're just waiting to die. And this is what happens. It's not that Africans don't have the people or the men or the professionals to be able to manufacture these medications, but patent, intellectual property. You cannot just get up and say, oh, there's vaccine, I'm making the same vaccines. You can't, because you'll be sued. All right, let's look at other stories as well. According to the graphic online, this is Ghana. The Bolgatanga Technical Institute was temporarily closed down following violent protests by some students of the school. So the protesters made up of final year students who are taking part in the ongoing West African Secondary School certificate examination, and second year students up to the number of 1,461 were asked to vacate the school by 4 p.m. However, the final year students would be allowed to come back to school compound when they have a paper to write and immediately leave after writing their respective papers. An arrangement which could remain to the end of the examinations. The Upper East Regional Minister, Stephen Yakubu, announced the decision when he led some members of regional security to assess the situation in the school as a result of a violent protest by students yesterday. Okay, so the regional minister says that they decided to close down the school in order not to jeopardize the security situation in the school, adding henceforth personnel of the Ghanaian police service will patrol the compound until reopening of the school. Okay, the students, mostly male, who had already planned the incident, suddenly went on a rampage yesterday morning around 10 a.m. and pelted the teachers with stones, resulting in some of the teachers taking cover in the library and the staff common room. The angry students blocked the main entrance to the school, as well as the main Bolgatanga Novungo Road, which prevented motorists and other road users from using that stretch of the road. Personnel of the police service were subsequently called in to disperse them and control the situation, but they turned their anger on the police and pelted them with stones. Warning shots were fired by the police to disperse the students, but they ran into schools to destroy even more vehicles. Okay, so we'll bring you more details on this particular subject. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, I have a few people who have texted to call in. You can call in, and messages have been coming in, so I will read out your messages. Just bear with me. Taking a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
Yo, Ghana for you want English approach my muha. Ya sweady. Yenya emranimfo a wen akwatare wo emranimu a poto kasemu ye kase a lawyer for entimi nuanom mumiyemfa ye immigration ensem nyina enko dan wo mo fortwell solicitors emranimu akuku drofo se watna ha che ombeboa wo ma wonsa ka won krata na se wedi edro nso a eyo mo kokokra eba ne nipa sitinamu ani adwuma mu nsem bia omudim akotene pa omo wo mere di mani pa bia na de enika wo mu mpo ne se no consultation fee.
Fortwell Solicitors always puts our clients' needs first. We specialize in all UK visa applications, detention and deportation cases, student and work points-based work permit applications from both UK and abroad. Fortwell Solicitors also deals with long residence and human rights applications outside the immigration rules. Don't wait till last minute. Fortwell Solicitors is located at
Unit 1, ground floor, Katrina House, 58 Clarendon Road, London, N80DJ. Nearest tube station, Tempark Lane and Woodgreen. Overground, Hornsey Station. Buses, 41 to Archway and 144 to Maswa Hill. For more info, call 0203 3257 030. Call our 24-hour line on 0754 8701 011. Website www.fortwellsolicitors.com.
opening hours Monday to Friday 9:30 to 5:30 p.m.
Thursday Beyonce Young Milton Keynes.
Fortwell Solicitors is regulated by SRA.
Fortwell Solicitors.
Welcome back. So, as I was talking, before we went on a break, as I was telling you about the incident that happened, which led to protests in Bolgatanga. So, what triggered the protest, right? Now, according to the principal of the school, Zachariah Yarosi, he said that 4 students and 2 teachers, a national service person, and the head of the engineering department were picked up by officials of the National Intelligence Bureau for indulging in examination malpractices. He alleged that some of the final year students connived with the 2 secondary year students who had maps paper that written last Monday, August 1st, 2022. So which was yesterday, or a few days ago, actually. Yeah. On their phones, which they solved for their final year students. Okay, so according to the principal of the school, some final year students connived with 2 second year students who were writing their maths paper on their phone on Monday, and literally tried to sneak in answers for the students. He stated that the final year students then came out regularly under the guise of going to use the washroom to sneak out to look at the answers and return to the examination with all answers to write them in the answer booklets. He added that officials of the NIB got wind of the malpractice and stormed the school to arrest the 2 second year students who mentioned the 2 teachers, and they were all rounded up and sent to the office of the NIB. Subsequently, the invigilators stamped the authority and decided not to allow the students out of the examination hall, which angered the students, who decided to vent their anger on their teachers. The principal, in the company of the management members of the institute, managed to secure a bail for the students and teachers taken to the NIB custody, and they were asked to report today for further interrogation. So that is what literally sparked the violence, the protest. The students, mostly male, who had already planned the incident, suddenly went on a rampage. So here we are. This is according to the principal. So a bunch of students who write in their maths, okay, teamed up or connived with other students to bring them the answers to the exams that they're writing. And when they were found out, they decided to go on a rampage to protest. So that happened in Balagatanga Technical Institute, which has been closed down temporarily. All right. Now let's look at other stories as well before I read your messages that have been coming in. UN Chief Antonio Guterres said that he was outraged after 2 people were killed and several others injured when US peacemakers opened fire during an incident in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on the Ugandan border on Sunday. Let's take a quick listen to this report.
A border post in Kasindi, a town in the North Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, bordering Uganda. It was here that 3 people were killed and several others injured when UN peacekeepers opened fire on Sunday. The UN force MONUSCO on Monday admitted that some of its peacekeepers had opened fire for unexplained reasons, adding that arrests had already been made.
The Secretary General conveyed his condolences and also apologized for yesterday's incident, which involved UN peacekeepers and took place in Kasindi on the border of the DRC and Uganda. The Secretary General said that the United Nations is totally committed to peace and to coordinating with Congolese armed forces and working with the FARDC to solve the situation and bring about stability in the eastern DRC. He also stressed in the strongest terms the need to establish accountability for those events and welcomed the decision by the special representative, his special representative in the DRC, Bintu Keita, to detain the mission personnel involved in the incident and to immediately open an investigation.
The Congolese government says it has launched an investigation to establish who was responsible. There are more than 120 militias operating in the DRC's troubled east. The UN first deployed an observer mission in 1999. In 2010, it became the peacekeeping mission MONUSCO.
Okay, now I do recall last week we did bring you the information on this particular story as the people of DRC telling the UN to essentially leave the country simply because they don't think that the UN are able to bring about peace in the country. All right, let's bring you other news as well. Algeria is interested in joining the BRICS, the economic bloc of developing countries, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The appeal was publicly made by the Northern African leader, Abdelmajid Tebboune, during a TV interview on Sunday. Algeria's president said that the club was an economic and political power that permitted to move away from the attraction of the 2 poles. According to the CIA's World Facts Book, the bloc represents 42% of the world's population and accounts for over 31% of the world's GDP. The last member to join the group was South Africa back in 2011. Okay, so hold on. I just tried to play this report.
Algeria is interested in joining the BRICS, the economic bloc of developing countries including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The appeal was publicly made by the Northern African leader, Abdelmajid Tebboune, during a TV interview broadcast last Sunday. Algeria's president said the club was an economic and political power that permitted to move away from the attraction of the 2 poles. According to the CIA's World Fact Book, the bloc accounts for over 31% of the world's GDP. The latest member to join the group was South Africa in 2011. On Sunday, Tebboune also said good news could quickly come, but events shouldn't be anticipated. The leader took part in a video conference between the BRICS members at the end of June. According to a senior French economist, Algeria is a heavyweight in the region, notably for its energy resources. But given the global geopolitical instability, the process could take a long time.
I mean, with this particular story, okay, is interesting simply because it's actually a challenge to the G7, okay, the world powerful economies. And let's not forget that China and India alone make up the world's 1/3 of the world's population. Is the BRICS actually strong enough to overtake the G7? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure because obviously they want to be in a position where they actually borrowing money to countries and taking over some initiatives across other countries, especially developing countries. Actually, again, it just depends on. I see we were talking yesterday about who's your ally. This is definitely to counter the G7, but I'm not sure. Because I'm not sure if it can have the BRICS can have the same influence impact as the US. I mean, when it comes to military capabilities, yes, we've got Russia and China, but combining, the likes of Canada, US, France, Germany, UK, I don't know. When it comes to military power, I don't think that they'll be able to match them as such. I think the two strongest countries is probably China, Russia, and also India. I think India got a few nuclear weapons as well. But let's continue. Let's bring you other news trending across the continent of Africa. Morocco won the double on Monday at the African Nations Beach Volleyball Championship in Agder. In the men's final, the pair, Abat El Guru from Morocco, beat the duo Andrea Martino Monjani from Mozambique by 2 sets. Sometimes, I think that we overlook these things, okay? And then before you know it, when it comes to Olympics, this is where we start paying attention. So I think it's only right that we share light on what's happening across the continent.
Morocco has retained its title of African champions of beach volleyball. The Moroccan men and women's teams emerged triumphant Monday in the competition that took place in the city of Agadir. We are African champions. It's really an emotion that can't be felt.
We had a tough time with a good team from Mozambique, good team from Mauritius too. It's cool to see so many teams for each country.
About 40 countries participated in the competition. The excitement and the level of players showed that the sport is increasingly gaining traction on the continent. Beach volleyball is developing more and more because we see like Mozambique, for example, which has a Brazilian trainer, which shows that there's some international interest.
The level of the Africa, I believe that you have great players with strong and power and abilities.
Le beach volleyball est désormais pratiqué un peu partout en
This sport is played all over Africa and even in interland countries that do not have a beach, such as Mali, Burkina Faso, and Sudan. But national federations lament the lack of support from governments.
Most countries are focusing on football. They are not focusing on different sports like beach volleyball or basketball. So they need to start focusing on that.
L'Afrique peut progresser, peut évoluer. Et donc Africa can progress. Hand in hand, we will go very far.
And we love Africa.
The African Confederation of Volleyball says it intends to deploy a specific program of development in schools on the continent.
No, it's fantastic news. I mean, a lot of the times when we talk about Africa, it's just football. You take away football and, we're nowhere to be seen. I mean, when it comes to athletics, we dominate as well, especially long distance running, track and field. When you take away running, I don't know what else we're good at. I mean, swimming, you have South Africa. South Africans are good at swimming. But usually volleyball is, I think, is dominated by Brazil and also other European countries. So it's good to actually have a diverse of sports that we can partake in and also triumph in, other than the usual football all the time. Now, another interesting story, okay? This is from the Ghana Web, saying that Ghana has become a poster child for economic mismanagement. Professor Steve Hank, or is it Hankey? Okay, Professor Steve Hankey, a professor of applied economics at St. Johns Hopkins University in the US, has for some time now been monitoring Ghana's economic growth and putting a spotlight on it. In his latest Economic Watch diaries on his Twitter timeline, the academic stated that since 2021, Ghana has lost more than half of its sovereign bonds, especially as the country is seeking for an IMF economic rescue program. This, he said, made a West African country which is on the brink of debt default a poster child for economic mismanagement. And I quote him, he says, Ghana's sovereign bonds have lost more than half their values since 2021. Ghana has become a poster child for economic mismanagement and is now on the brink of default. Okay, so there you have it. There you have it. Another story, okay, which I thought was important to bring to your attention this morning, is that Nigeria halts the importation of SIM cards. Nigeria's government says it has banned the importation of SIM cards used in mobile phones. Communications Minister Isa Patimi said that the industry at the industry conference yesterday that cards are now produced in Nigeria. He went on to say that ban was part of the government's efforts to promote local manufacturing following launch in June of SIM card factory in Lagos. He explained that Nigeria, as the most populous nation in Africa, should not be importing goods that could be made domestically, adding that government wanted Nigeria's technology sector to be 80% self-reliant by 2025. Observers say having locally made SIM cards might reduce costs, but with only one manufacturer, overpricing could be a problem. And this has always been the case, isn't it? One is the lack of competitive competition. Two is Nigeria is a populous country, the most populous country in Africa. So now you're looking at mass production. And I think sometimes this is where the problem is. I remember speaking to one of the government officials. I wasn't speaking to him. I asked him a question. It was a forum that I was invited to take part in as a listener, and during this conversation, he was actually trying to encourage people to invest in Ghana and so on and so forth. And, I did ask him about, you're telling us to come to Ghana, but here we are to invest people in the let's say in the manufacturing sector industry. But here we are, or people involved in buying and selling, importing, exporting. And here we are, you want us to come home to invest and start our own businesses, but every day there's influx of goods coming into the country. How are we going to be able to sustain our businesses? And what measures can be put in place to reduce the amount of imported goods? With Kofi Ali that said it yesterday, even toothpick is imported to the country. And then his reaction was, well, right now we can't put an end to importing goods because we don't produce on a mass scale. Until we're able to do that, then the government can look at drafting or coming up with policies to limit the amount of goods that comes into the country. Okay, so let's say, for instance, in the agricultural sector, how much tomatoes do we produce? I don't know. I don't have the figures at hand here. Tomatoes that are used to make stew, tomatoes that are used to make other things. Can we produce them in that large quantity, can we? To all of a sudden stop influx from coming in. So, in as much as this is a good policy, of course, it would be good to also see that other companies are also getting on board to be able to produce SIM cards in the country. So there is a way, and it can be done. It can be done, especially in Nigeria. And it's good that a lot of some policies now are geared towards industrialization and trying to promote homegrown produce, homegrown factories, setting up factories to produce homegrown stuff. So it is good, but we need to find a way to be able to produce on a larger scale. So there's no deficit if we decide to say, okay, we don't want any tomatoes coming from Italy into the country anymore. There's enough to be able to go around. We don't want any shortages, because when that happens, and of course, then the government has no reason but to open up its markets again for foreign goods to come in. A lot of text messages have popped up on my screen. The time now is coming up to 10 o'clock. I'm going to read a few of your text messages, and we'll speak to some of our callers who are willing to call in. This is GN Radio UK. Let me remind you, we are streaming live on Facebook and also on YouTube as well. If you want to send in your messages, you can do so. You can call in as well, 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can call the mobile line, 0778-793-9958. This is GN Radio UK. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the program. This is GN Radio UK with myself, Awuah. We're here till 11 a.m. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of August, 2022. Christmas is just around the corner. Well, it is for me. As soon as we enter August, I'm just looking ahead, not behind me, okay? And yeah, I'm just looking forward to Christmas. I'm going to start my Christmas shopping very, very soon. But back to issues that we're discussing here. You can call in 0203 735 8820 or 0203 286 0185. Alternatively, you can call on 0778 793 9958. Let's hear you. I keep saying this, and I'll say it each and every morning. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. Of course, I have my days where I will rant and rave, but most importantly, I want to hear from you. Keep your texts and comments coming in. I will read them up. Let's go on the phone lines. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Mr. Yes, what would you like to say this morning?
There are so many things to say, but I'll pick on the reparations you are talking about.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where this idea comes from. We must instead forget the past and move on. This is a very long time ago, slavery. It's been a very long time ago, but because we are struggling, we are now going back, God knows, hundreds of years to claim money from whom? From Boris Johnson or from whom? That's no point. God has given us so many things. We've got to use them, turn them into money and look after ourselves. We cannot do it, and we are now going back. Kwame Nkrumah would not have done that. I repeat, Nkrumah would not have done that. The man was looking forward. When NPP were threatening them, Nkrumah and his government with bombs. After all that, NPP is in power, now they are talking of reparations. Reparations for what? How much money do you want from the United Kingdom because of slave trade?
Well, according to the president of Ghana, Nana Addo, and of course, this is a fact, really. He said that when slavery was abolished, even the owners of the slave masters received reparations in a tune of 20 million pounds, which is equivalent to 20 billion pounds in today's money, Mr. Yosin.
Okay. But, nobody is speaking against that. Mind you, the slave masters invested their money in slave trade. So when it was abolished, it also affected them. Let's face it.
But then what about, Mr. Yosin, the Jewish, the 6 million Jewish that died at the hands of Hitler? Jewish people also received reparations, Mr. Yosin.
Yes, I know, but we have received more money from the British people than any other countries. We as Ghanaians, as Africans, always the British people look at the recent COVID. What happened? How much money did Britain not give to Ghana for free? We are always looking for disasters, and the international community come to help us. What I'm saying is that we've got something. We are not Gambia. Ghana is not Gambia. Gambia has only got peanuts. We have gold, we have bauxite, we have oil, we have manganese. Excuse me, we are so stupid we cannot turn these things into useful projects. Then we going back to slave trade hundreds of years ago. God will laugh at us. They should shut up and do the job. If MPP cannot do the job, they must sit down, back off, and other people will come and do the job. Nkrumah was doing the job when they removed him. All that listen, in this world, if you are poor, you are looking for every money everywhere. And Ghana is not a poor country. But we have just been made poor by the NPP. I'm not even going to talk of NDC. But the NPP was the main political party. The oldest party in Ghana is NPP now. Ghana's independence, NPP was formed. What can they do? And what did Nkrumah not do? What did Kwame Nkrumah did? We saw it. All that I'm asking for, MPP too must do something better. They have to do, instead of going back to slave trade time, please, don't. We don't have to go there. Even though we understand the argument, it's not the time for that type of argument. They enslaved us. Maybe the benefit of slavery is what we are seeing now. Today, Akufo-Addo in Ghana is wearing suit and tie. Today, he will get on the plane to go to IMF or United States to beg for money, and he will even charter a plane and put a girlfriend on the plane as well. Akosua-Brenyi or Sawa-Brenyi. We know these silly stories. Now, how come we're going back hundreds of years back for what? Jews were exterminated, we know. Slave trade happened, we know. World War I happened, we know. World War II happened, we know. We have so many things that have happened in the world. Why do we want to go back? We can't go back. Let us go forward. The things God have given to us, please, let us use them. And if NP cannot do it, they shouldn't take part in any future elections. And leave us. We can also do. The children of Nkrumah, we are waiting in the wings. We will also come to power and deliver. That's what we want to do. There are so
All
many
right,
people
Mr. Yosef.
who are in.
I was going to say thank you very much for your contribution this morning, sir.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Yosin. So if you just tuned in, right? The question we're asking this morning, is slavery reparations for Africa long overdue, according to the president of Ghana. We're asking if you agree or disagree. Clearly, Mr. Yosin disagrees. He thinks that we need to move on. It's high time that we moved on. This happened years and years ago. Why can't we handle our own affairs? If the current government is unable to do its job, then it should step aside. Mr. Yosin also made the argument that how many times have we borrowed money from the West? All right, let me hear your take on this. You can call in or send a text message. 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can send a text message 0787-879-9958. Let's hear you. I just received a text message that the phone line was busy. They've been trying to call all this while. And also, we spoke about the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Do you believe in it? Do you think it can happen? And what are your thoughts in general about the AFCFTA? The AFCFTA, let me just remind you, is to create a single continental market with a population of about 1.3 billion people and a combined GDP of approximately 3.4 trillion. So, the last time I had the opportunity to speak to the head of the AFCFTA, His Excellency Wamkelemene, his name is, who is actually spearheading this initiative. And it is one of the African Union's policy of which they call Agenda 2063. It's one of his main flagship program or policy. And I spoke to him about this, and he is very, very, he's in high spirits of trying to make this happen. We can get all the countries to ratify this and for it to be implemented. Well, it has been implemented, but we just need all the countries for it to work effectively. And as I was playing, I played you a clip earlier to do with intellectual property, because this is one of the main, bone of contention with this particular policy. And I think, deliberations are still ongoing, or I'm not quite sure where it is right now. But obviously, you don't want anybody picking up goods from China and claiming that it's from one of the countries that have signed this agreement. You don't want to go and pick up some stuff from China and say, hey, by the way, this is from Ghana and I'm selling it. No, it needs to be, I need to make sure that the rights of origin can be proven, and also intellectual property. You can't take somebody's thing, idea, or something and claim it for it to be yours. So this is some of the areas that they're discussing. Also, I asked him that, every once in a while, or even not every once in a while, is rampant now. There's coup d'etats here, level of instability across some parts of the region, the impact on the AFC FTA. Nevertheless, they're still pushing forward with it. And if they're able to implement it effectively, then the continent will become the biggest economic bloc. Okay, become the economic bloc. Okay, let's take a few of your text messages. This is from Irene. Irene is saying, Jones, I totally agree with Mr. Yosin. It's high time we move on. We can't keep begging and begging and begging. We have to move on. Who are we expecting to give us this amount of money? What happened is sad, but unfortunately, the time has passed. We must move on. Okay, so that's from Irene. So another message from Joseph, which I thought was interesting. Joseph is saying, I cannot believe what your caller just said. If other minorities have received reparations, why not us? Why not descendants of Africans? Why should we always be treated the least? It's high time they paid for everything that they did. Let's not forget, slavery is still not over. It's still happening. Look at what happened in Libya. Okay. All right. I get it. I get what you're saying. Obviously, I know that when you say slavery is not over, I think you're talking about probably neocolonialism you're trying to aim at. Alex is saying, good morning, Joseph. Thank you for bringing this topic. I saw it yesterday on social media. I think Ronaldo is bang on. I live in the UK, have experienced racism, and it's high time that the British and the ones who own slaves pay for what they have done to our people. If we want ourselves to be taken seriously in the diaspora, they need to acknowledge the wrongs they did to us. I think that's a good point, actually, because I think when Prince Harry, not Prince Harry, I beg your pardon, Prince William and Kate went to the Caribbean, right? And there were demonstrations there. And I think people were still waiting for them to apologize for Britain's role in the slave trade, right? And I'm sure somebody will let me know. I'm not sure. I don't think they apologize. And I think apologizing obviously means that you accept that what you did was wrong. And as such, this could lead to people crying out for compensation. So let me just flip it on its head for a brief moment. Why do you think that all these other minorities, the Jewish people, the Japanese, who were held as prisoners of war during Second World War, the families were compensated. How come only Black people have not been compensated? Why is that? Why is that? Because that's something to look at. And I do understand what the other text was saying, because if you want to hit somebody where it hurts, it's in their pockets, isn't it so? Right. And I mean, look, it's not hidden secret. You say anything negative about the Jewish community, you can criticize the Jewish state, okay? But you say something about the Jewish community, you're losing everything. Basically, you're losing everything. And we must applaud the Jewish community for being able to talk about what happened to their ancestors to make sure this doesn't happen again, to the point where companies have enshrined what they perceive, what they believe to be anti-Semitic into their code of conduct. Hello, good morning.
Morning, James. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, sir. Mr. Kofi Ali, what would you like to say, sir?
Yes, sir. Quickly, I don't think we have time to talk about the claim of economic mismanagement.
The claim of what, sir?
You know, there was one doctor, I think, a professor from the US who mentioned, I think, an article he wrote about Ghana's economic mismanagement.
Oh, yes.
And I think that is a fallacy. That line of thought needs to be totally disabused. And I will come back to this issue one day when the opportunity. It's a very deep issue. And we are hiding behind the Godisbergian economy, the economy of Godisberg, which can properly be explained when the time allows.
Okay.
Now, I quickly want to jump to the issue we are talking about now, which Akufo-Addo, President Akufo-Addo, jumped on the bandwagon of the so-called reparation issue. And I think it's a sign of failure. Failure to understand the real problem. It is time, I believe, we stop mixing discrimination or racism with slave trade. The issue of the slave trade that we go about, again, mixing with the issue of the Jewish issue, the Japanese you just mentioned, and others, is totally different from the one you saw on the African continent that was experienced as slave trade. Right. In fact, it's even different from the massacre of the indigenous people of America, the Apaches, or the people of, what's the name of that country, and the Aborigine of Australia. The continent, the one that happened on the continent of Africa. First of all, we must remember, before the Europeans arrived, we have been involved in slave trade, right? We've been dealing in slavery, selling slaves, which in what you call the trans-Saharan slave trade. I don't know whether you are aware of that side of history for thousands of years. Now, which you will say is an indigenous practice. So it's not something that comes from outside. The problem that we have, unlike all the other problems we are talking about, where the so-called reparation, it's a language I don't even like talking about, and I despise that use of the word, and I'll explain myself. But let us come back to the issue of the transatlantic slave trade. Transatlantic slave trade, that was fueled by our own cultural behavior. Can you see? There was an internal activities that made that thing possible and the lasting, very sustained for a very long time. We shouldn't get ourselves wrong. It's a willing trade of partners. Can you see? Yes, the Europeans wanted to move people by force, of course, to the Americans. But they were the so-called people we worship today. We carry them about called chiefs. They were the traders. They were trading before the Europeans arrived.
Okay, Kofi.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you a question, because you did make a mention about you said that the Native Americans, what they experienced to that of the transatlantic slave trade was different. But
yes.
I just want you to maybe just explain why you think it's different, because I'm looking at the idea behind it. The idea behind it, Kofi.
Yes, the Americans, they are on their own land. I'm talking about native people, and the ones from Europe were there. Can you see? And there was war between the two because what? The Europeans wanted to settle down, as you have in the United States today. Can you see? And in that war, the indigenous people fought back and they were massacred. They were killed. Can you see? On their own land. That is a serious issue. Can you see? They were extinct. that you can understand. It's just like the Jews who did not do anything, that had themselves been taken to the what? The camps and killed. Can you see? It's different from those whose own chiefs, whose own people were attacking themselves and catching them and selling it to a willing buyer. They are two different things.
Okay, so I hear you, Kofi. But when we talk about slavery, when I say the idea behind it, what happened to Native Americans, in my perspective, there's no difference, because we're talking about the the Berlin Conference of 1844-1845, the demarcation of Africa. Okay, Kofi, are you still there? Okay, I think Kofi's line has dropped. Kofi, you can call back, sir. Okay, I think Kofi is calling back. Kofi, hello.
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
So yes, as I was saying, we're talking about the demarcation of Africa, the Berlin Conference. Okay, and for me, it is the same pattern, because what happened to indigenous Americans, the Native Americans, was that the Americans saw themselves as superior to the natives, and as such went about conquest, right? And it's the same thing that happened with the slave trade, with slaves, with the Europeans coming on our shores. Now, coming back to the subject of our own chiefs selling our people, yes, it did happen. It is true. However,
what punishment are we giving them for that?
I understand, but we need to also be able to put things into perspective, because as you mentioned, the trans-Saharan slave trade, I think at that particular time, if slaves were bought, if you were a slave, you were not exposed to the inhumane act that our people were experiencing when they went, they crossed our shores into the Americas. That is not what's happening.
Let me come in quickly here.
Or slaves, should I say, were able to integrate within society, and that was not what happened when the Europeans and the Americans or the Europeans rather got involved.
Yeah, you see, 80% of the slaves move across the desert, right? They die by hardship and pains on the desert itself. Mansa Musa was said to have taken 200 slaves carrying gold to Mecca. He didn't come back with any of them. Now, when they get them to the Middle East, if you read the history of the Middle East very well, and remember, the Romans, you understand, and the Greek, they bought a lot of slaves. I will come to that, and the Carthaginians. Now, when the Egyptians bought slaves from West Africa, they are those who are building the what do you call it, the pyramids. They subject them to inhumane treatment. And particularly the one that end up in Europe, they castrate them so that they don't reproduce again. Another set is coming. Let us understand that the record you have when they were taking them across the sea, right? And it's time we stop calling those in America the whites. They are actually Europeans. When we are talking about Americans, we should in this context, let us make the difference between the Native Americans, who are the Red Indians, and the Europeans, who we are pointing fingers at now, who moved to America. Can you see? They are just as the blacks who were taken out of Africa to that part. They are all migrants. Can you see? The difference is that one went voluntarily, the other were taken by force. So let us get the distinction, and the record were kept. The reason why we are making noise about this thing is that there were records kept on that front. You understand? And we've learned a lot about these things in history. Besides, the blacks themselves who were taken to America, you understand, while they were in America, instead of leaving them, they were kept on plantations. Okay? Now, that is where people have problems. Can you see? And the language of the blacks or Americans in general today are the language you have that are forming the language of resistance all over the world for the oppressed against the oppressors. Remember, the Americans, those we call the Americans the whites, They are the same people who fought the British Empire. I don't know whether you are aware of that.
Yeah.
So the kind of language they were using is the language that today has become the language of revolution, the language of resistance. And the blacks who were among them also use it. So across the continent of Africa today, that language has become what? Our front for fighting whatever we think as oppression. Now let's come back to the Berlin Conference. Now we know what you are talking about.
Yeah.
Hello? Good. Some of us are saying it's time we stop looking at the glass as empty. Let's look at the glass as half full. Look at how they cut us like animals, like chicken, away. You should be asking that question. If they come today to catch us like that, it will be difficult as they did almost 1,000 years ago.
Difficult for who?
Right, Europeans to come to catch us the way they catch us that way. And we don't want it. Right now, on the African continent, you go and catch someone, if they don't want it, you think it's going to be easy? The government don't want it. You look at a country like Guinea. You go to Guinea or Mali, that you want to catch people and take them to Europe by force or anywhere in the world. You think you find it easy? Hello?
No, I'm listening, Kofi. I'm listening.
It won't be easy. Therefore, let's look at it this. Why was it easy that time? And it will be a bit difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible because these people have got high level of technology that we don't have. Can you see?
Yeah. Are you still there? Kofi, you can call back to finish. I think the point I was trying to make is this. Yes, you're right in saying that it is the same British people that Europeans that took over the Americas, and Americans who later became Americans fought with the French to defeat Great Britain in the Revolution to self-determination. But then the interesting part is the Americans who opposed empire, then itself became an empire. Itself became an empire. But Kofi, I know that you didn't make mention of the fact that due to Akufo-Addo's utterances, is just a sign of failure. I mean, that's an argument on its own. However, we cannot move away from the fact that Native Americans did receive reparations. They did receive it. The Jewish did receive it. So it's not necessarily about slavery as such, but people that were meted with such inhumane acts, Kofi, ought to be compensated. Now, whether you think now is the time or not, I think that is debatable. It's debatable. That can be argued because everybody seems to be getting reparations, other than Africans or people of African descent. You can also call in 0203-735-8820. Hello. Do call back. The phone just cut off. Do call back. Okay, because I want to hear from you. Hello.
Hello, is that Jones?
Yes, speaking, Mr. Ali. Let's hear you. Let's round up.
Oh, in running up, please. You see, when you say compensated, and you say some people have been compensated, isn't it? Yes. So what you are actually expecting, tell us what you want. Do you want them to move London to your land? We don't know. In fact, to be honest with you, we have failed. Let us stop blaming others. Let us look at ourselves. We had a problem. Let's solve it. And then stop looking at others. Why do we want money? So that we buy cars from them again and the money finish and we go back?
But let me ask you this question, because we spoke about this yesterday, and as soon as I got home, by afternoon time, the story was trending. Do you think it resonates with people in the diaspora more than our brothers and sisters back home.
You mean what? What are you talking about?
This particular story, the reason why people have jumped on the bandwagon to push for reparations, the fact that the president spoke about this has really caught on and is, trending on Twitter, for instance. And
You see,
one argument or one school of thought is that it resonates more with people in the diaspora as opposed to our brothers and sisters back home across Africa.
yes, because over there they can probably feel that look, the problem is not going to be borrowing and be begging and be crying for the operation. And look, the problem is down there to be solved. Over here, you understand, a lot of us from the Caribbean, they can have a reason to cry. You understand? Those on the Caribbean, you see, there are different fronts you are looking at this thing. Those in Jamaica, they are not from that land, though. They were being shipped outside. On the way, they found themselves in Jamaica. So if they are suffering today, they can say, why did you even take us from where we are coming from? It makes sense. Is that not true?
Yeah.
So they can now stand and say, no, we think something can be built here for us. Even if it's a two-way road, it's fine for them. On the African continent, we sold them, for God's sake. Why we in the front of criminals? We sold them. Until we learn to point finger at ourselves, we will not stop this criminality we are involved in. We do not have excuse. Kitchiosin is even giving you an example. We have gold, we have this, we have that. The only thing, common sense, we don't have human being and common sense to know that human beings are the resources that develop everything. We turn people into animals and imbeciles. And we don't even understand that developing human beings is what development is all about. And then we are looking at those who are able to do something, and every day we are looking at them. Our case is different. The African continent is big. We have every potential you can talk about in the world. We don't have excuse. You understand me? We should sit down and look among ourselves and figure it out. If the problem is us, and if you have some people on some island somewhere, or some people who see the white man every day, and because they see the white man every day, they have a problem with that. That is their problem. You go to Ghana, you will not see any white man there. All of us are black. Is that not true? Then why do we have problem with people? If not because we are buying cars from them, we are buying this from them, we are paying aeroplane even to fly their plane. We can't do anything in toilet we cannot build. So what do we want for reparation? Is it toilet?
Good, Mr. Akufo-Addo, thank you very much for your contribution. Always interesting to talk to you. You can also call in 0203-735-8820. Or you can send a text 077-8793-9958. This is from Alex Jones. Good morning. What is it with Mr. Kofi-Addo? How can he not grasp the fact that we need to hold these people accountable? In any case, if anybody commits an act, and of course, what they did cannot bring back the people that were treated inhumanely or people that died as a result of slavery, but compensation is needed. Africa and people of African descent should and must receive and must be compensated for the atrocities that happened during the slave trade. Okay, that's from Alice. This is from Janet. Janet is saying, good topic, Jones. And like Kofi-Addo, I think it's high time we move on. We can't keep begging these people. We need to move on and look at our natural resources and be able to transform and develop our countries and the continent at large. Okay. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we continue. Keep your messages coming in. You can call in as well. This is GN Radio UK with myself, Jones Awuah. It's the morning breakfast show. We've got about 20 minutes before we sign off, so do keep your messages coming in.
Yo, Ghana for you want English approach my moha. Ya sweaty. Yenya emranimfo a wen akwatare wo emranimu a poto kasa mu ye kasa a lawyer for entimi nuanom mumiyemfo ye immigration ensem nyina enko dan wo mo fortwell solicitors emranimu akukudrofo se watna ha che ombeboa wo ma wonsa ka won krata na se wedi edro nso a eyom kokokra eba ne nipa sitina mu ani adwuma mu nsem bia omudim akotene pa omo wo mre di mani pa bia na de enika wo mu mpo ne se no consultation fee.
Fortwell Solicitors always puts our clients' needs first. We specialize in all UK visa applications, detention and deportation cases, student and work points-based work permit applications from both UK and abroad. Fortwell Solicitors also deals with long residence and human rights applications outside the immigration rules. Don't wait till last minute. Fortwell Solicitors is located at
Unit 1, ground floor, Katrina House, 58 Clarendon Road, London, N80DJ, nearest tube station, Tempark Lane and Wood Green, Overground, Hornsey Station, buses 41 to Archway and 144 to Maswa Hill. For more info, call 0203 3257 030. Call our 24-hour line on 0754 8701 011. Website www.fortwellsolicitors.com.
Opening hours Monday to Friday 9:30 to 5:30 p.m.
Thursday beyond so your Milton Keynes.
Fortwell Solicitors is regulated by SRA.
Fortwell Solicitors.
Become a successful entrepreneur with Jackie and her professional team. Become a successful entrepreneur. Anase Base. Wami a team of professional teachers of economics, marketing. Ninga omoyebi. So pesa will transform your life from a youth graduate and a school leaver. Nasa pesa woye entrepreneur. Mon contacti Base. Entrepreneur no che say obia ebia wa wo business. Ebia uye che. But pesa woye no in a professional way. To say Oprah Winfrey. Anaya papa. Kwame Despite. Base. Betmama sa Diano Abim. One your experts our coaching and a mentoring and as all person will start our business base for better how our expand your business and as existing customer base provides support in business plans, step-by-step finance applications and marketing strategies. Base or become a successful entrepreneur also provide entrepreneurship skills through vision and determination. Some more pay free consultation for a base
073 99867 417. I repeat 073 99867 417.
And also one email address info@becomeasuccess.co.uk. Website www.becomeasuccess.co.uk. Mokohwa mobetimi make bookings for an appointment. Base and I said become a successful entrepreneur. Let's turn your vision into a reality.
The world as we know it has changed, and so have the issues affecting our community.
COVID-19 and the geopolitical tensions have really made it abundantly clear that the African continent has to do more to be self-sufficient from an industrial capacity point of view.
Join me, Awuah, on GN Breakfast Show as we look at issues affecting us here in the UK, with a close eye on trending stories across the world.
When we invest from the UK into infrastructure in African countries, that it is absolutely transparent.
With a focus on Ghana's social and political issues.
I mean, it's not about you thinking about, your money, the Sikajibasa side. It's not what our authorities should be thinking about, or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Akosia na mutini seni akoda ya de sese de sa di nsemu Ebusia. Ese dia me pa no. Yonku na si no. Usani mame. She, ya sorry preko pe na fa akra no kona kwagina yaresa. Adan wo wura fi se ebisa wo yi efri twa kunkun ana. Samuel wo me di kan etredu no wotwe di chemu wotwe no. Eho na bra na so wo ne Philippine for ekoko. Okọ oba bia no aben e wo hu. Emo de to nanim se wokoko na obewu. Asante kotoko se wotu so a ehimu enu nti sorry preko pe na tutumirika. Na fa akra no kwagina yarehwe. Esanse anoma wo ye monopo. Ma me koso hwe aboa ni papi. Wonyo ma ti se yimu. Opeme okọ nachi na wasan ababiem. Se de onnam posene kane no. Wonim se oba bia cha adwaye a na osiesie no. Honhum yade ti se obaidi. Honhum attack adaye so basa kodan na abrabo na sinitrase ayem hihye. Wo hihye na adwiregu abrabo mu adeso biada. Wo ba abrochire hayi ya santo apenso. Na nso wonko a wosia na ebu. Wo hihye na adwiri. Wo bopa na esane. Sikato wonsam a na ahye kai na hunu se obiara nu a watumi atumika esan otwen ho da. Ma wo ho enye hare. Na wo de na ankoye se abrodwuma a woforobo wieye na afi obeka se wonu no ho. Wonu yade adokotafo antimi ansa no. Enumpo eno ye ho adwuma. From ma me koso hwe wo ahoma yi so 079084699914 079084699914 ana 0740580734 0740580734 ma me koso hwe ana ye twe no a ye twe botantim
Welcome back to the program. This is GN Morning Breakfast Show with myself, Jones Awuah. The time now is 11:15. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of August, 2022. If you just tuned in, I mean, we've covered a lot of stories this morning, but what has been dominating the discussion this morning is that the president of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, said that it's high time that Africans or people of African descent received reparations for slave trade. And we're asking if you do agree. Earlier on, when I'll come to your text messages soon again. And if you want to call in, you can do so, all right? Earlier on, when I was talking to Kofi Ali, and mind you, the fact that Kofi brought in the Native Americans, the Red Indians, right? And to date, they're still receiving reparation from America, the US, I should say. Because when you say the United States, I think it's more about the states as opposed to Americans, the people, okay? So they're still receiving reparations. And then I did ask Kofi, and I know that Kofi is listening, and I was trying to talk about the ideology behind it, the ideology behind the conquest, because it's a self-belief that the West are superior and these people are nothing. When I say these people, we're talking about the indigenous people across the continent of Africa. Africans are nothing. And so they embark on a conquest territory to expand the empire. And it's the same ideology, okay? The self-belief that the white man is the one that's coming to save you. It's coming to save us. And it's the same ideology that was used to by Americans, the Union back then, to go on a conquest, to expand towards the West. So they had this concept of, the early Americans called manifest destiny. So the manifest destiny simply means that the Americans have the God-given right to expand and to bring renovations, to bring modernity to Native Americans. So you realize that there's actually a picture. If you go online and if you Google manifest destiny, you see that there's a white woman with blonde hair with the Liberty star on her forehead with a Bible, holding a telecommunication line, basically just bringing modernization, right? And it's the same principle that was used. It's the God-given rights to come up, to go, to conquer, to conquest, to go on a conquest. And it's the same thing. The Berlin Conference in 1844, 1845, the demarcation of Africa. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Of course, yes, our people did sell people into slavery. However, we cannot overlook the fact that a lot of people were captured and sold into slavery. And yes, slavery was a universal thing at that time in history, but the treatment of slaves, how they were treated on European soil to that of an African soil, was completely different. So I think this is where the distinction is. Nevertheless, the treatment that were meted to people who were sold into slavery or captured into slavery was inhumane. And other groups who have suffered similar treatment were compensated. How much more Africans is what we're discussing. Let's hear your take on this. 0203 735 8820 or 0778 793 9958. We also brought you headlines, stories trending across the continent of Africa. One being the UN force admits deadly shooting at DR Congo border post. Last week, we brought you the news that people in that region actually want the UN peacekeepers to be out of the country simply because they've been unable to bring about peace. And the US forces have admitted literally killing, Congolese people as they opened fire on them. Another story is Algeria wishes to join the BRICS. Now, the BRICS is equivalent to the G7. And so this is emerging economies forming together. Algeria has decided or has indicated that they want to join. Now, according to the CIA's World Facts Book, the BRICS bloc represents 42% of the world's population. I mean, there's no, it's common sense will tell you that, because the likes of China and India make up 1/3 of the world population. And accounts for over 31 of the world's GDP. The latest member to join the group was South Africa back in 2011. So this is another, economic bloc, global economic bloc that's trying to rival the G7. I don't know how they'll be able to achieve that, because the US, when it comes to influence or territories, the US have been able to do that. The US have been doing that for years. Now, of course, you see China trying to, now it's not so much about territories, but it's about influence, okay? And you've seen the investment infrastructure that China has embarked, especially across the continent of Africa. And China is trying to stake a claim to Africa as well. Now, a few days ago, we saw Russia's ambassador in Africa. And then off the back of that, the US also sent their ambassadors to Africa. So you can see what is happening there. Interesting times ahead. And then Morocco wins African Beach Volleyball Championship. And it's worth noting that, Africa is well known for football and also athletics. So it's beautiful to see, diversification of sports that, Africa can be represented on the global stage, not just football and athletics. And also sometimes boxing, but boxing is almost like we come and go, isn't it? Also, another news, a bit of entertainment news, a sad news. Veteran Ghanaian actor who goes by the name of Awuah sadly passed away. And then we touched on the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. This is an expert here is saying that it must resume, and people need to ratify the agreement so it can work effectively. And then we brought you headlines of the news, the news headlines here in the UK. Another interesting story is that Nigerian government, right, holds the importation of SIM cards. I mean, I don't understand like how we keep importing stuff, how we keep importing goods, how we supposed to become an industrialized nation if we keep importing, the most simplest thing that can be manufactured in our country. I don't understand. I really, really don't understand. And who knows what it would take to be able to shift that mentality or that idea that's been sown into our heads that we're unable to do things and we must import things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against, importing stuff, or neither am I anti-globalist. On the contrary, because we've seen the impact of globalization, right? We've seen the pros and cons, and some of the good things of having an open market is, less technology. Right now, you can go to your village somewhere, and your grandmom will have access to mobile phones to be able to transfer money to them. You're able to talk to them, as opposed to the old days where you had to write a letter, or somebody in the village, the educated person in the village is the one that will write letters, or you send audios, cassette tapes, audios. Who remembers that? To be able to communicate with your loved ones, and this is as a result of globalization that, even if phone are cheap, they're making cheap phones. Nevertheless, it gives people in rural areas the opportunity to also have access to these technological devices. So, it has a plus sides, but there needs to be it needs to be regulated, where homegrown products needs to be patronized. Homegrown products needs to be given the opportunity to also excel. Otherwise, we're just going to crumble, and nothing we make will be of any substance or value. So, well done to the Nigerian government. Okay, let me take a few of your text messages in closing. On the issue of the AFCFTA, this is from Michael. Michael saying, Jones, I think it's a fantastic idea, but I wonder what China will have to say about this, or what the West will have to say about this, because it looks like every time Africa wants to embark on something that will have drastic or radical impact, it never comes to fruition. Look at what happened to Gaddafi. Okay, I'll take your point on that, Michael. This is from Alyssa. Alyssa is saying that, Jones, I think the reparation discussion, it is long overdue, but I think right about now it's not the time to have such conversation, because it's not going to happen. Let's face it, it's not going to happen. And I agree with Kofi Ali, the fact that he said the president's utterances is just a sign of failure. Let's not forget, this was the same Ghanaian president that said Ghana beyond aid. What happened to Ghana beyond aid? The last time I checked, Ghana have run to the IMF. Wow. Okay. This is from Lydia. Lydia is saying, when will this president stop making statements? He should focus on issues back home and stop making ridiculous statements. Let the people outside whose slavery impacted seriously be the ones to be projecting this movement, not him. He should deal with things back home and stop talking. Crikey. I mean, look, this is the beauty of democracy, isn't it? And this is the beauty of sharing our thoughts. I mean, we all can't jump on the same bandwagon. Our thoughts and views may differ. We agree to disagree. In as much as I agree with some of the comments that have come in, I think the fundamental point still stands, that if one particular group were compensated, one or the other. Does this indicate that one suffering was much more than the other? And one time, right before I close up, so I was thinking about this, right? Because here, I mean, even in the Labour Party, Labour has been accused of anti-Semitism, right? They're not able to deal with it. When it comes to the Conservative, it's about Islamophobia, okay? And so racism, when it comes to racism, is everywhere. But on the subject of the Jewish community, and I mean, I must applaud them being able to have such formidable force to the point where if you say anything negative, and you don't need to understand what anti-Semitism is or it's not, is by their definition. So, which makes me understand that when somebody says something which has a racial connotation to it, and they say to you, no, but that's not racism, it's not up to them to define how you should feel or what racism is. You're the one at the receiving end, and as such, you should be given the right to be able to express yourself, to let the person know what you're doing here, what you said here, or what you're trying to imply is actually racist, right? And I mean, kudos to the Jewish communities, and we must applaud them. And I've seen it so many times. How many people have made some comments which have been classified as anti-Semitic, and already they get cancelled. But on racism or discrimination towards Black people doesn't receive the same importance, okay, when it comes to dealing with it. I will tell you my conclusion maybe next week, God willing. Because unfortunately, I've come to the end of the show. Thank you for your text messages and your calls. I know there's a lot of text messages, but I couldn't read all of them. Okay, keep them coming. Keep the conversation going. Keep it going on our Facebook page, our YouTube page as well. Subscribe whilst you're there and follow us on social media as well. We're done for the week, actually. Yes, we are. We're done for the week. Thank you very much for staying tuned. All being well, I'll be back here again next week, Monday. Look after yourself. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And I'll see you next week.